Hello everyone, and welcome to this video which is in our Great Engine Game series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and we are taking a look at maybe the best game of the TCEC Cup. It's Igel-Revenge, played in the quarterfinal. So this position looks like a fairly quiet Ruy Lopez, but the path to it was quite unusual. And well, the quietness of this position gives no idea of the chaos that's about to ensue in the rest of the game. How did we get to this opening? Well, it was e4, d6, d4, and now the TC book move, a6. a6, what's a6? Well, it's a half move. You know, it's not necessary in this position, but it doesn't ruin anything, and you could easily fall back into a known main line, you know, depending what white plays. So, for example, you know, after knight c3, actually none of the engines wanted to do this, because after g6, f4, bishop g7, you're back into a Tiger modern, a system named after Tiger Hilart Persson. Black delays the development of the knight on g8 and plays b5, bishop b7, knight d7, c5, and well, this is pretty respectable, and engines score quite nicely with it with black. I mean, the one thing about it is that you know, you might transpose back into a known main line, but of course, you know, playing a6 this early, you're kind of telegraphing the line that you're going to play. So white might be able to just choose a system, you know, that well, in which a6 is not one of the best lines. For example, the thing that attracted me was to play, you know, c4. And you know, if we aim back for a King's Indian, you know, I might just play the classical variation. We head back to this line, and well, you know, a6 is a very unusual idea here. Black normally plays e5, or the Mardel Platas that we get, or the classical after knight bd7. a6 very rarely plays, so that should just be, you know, a comfortable little advantage for white. But there, you know, there's plenty of other things that can be done. But that would be my intuitive thought. But the engines played knight f3, which is also very sensible. And after knight f6, bishop d3, knight c6, threatening something like knight b4. Stockfish allowed this against Leela in one of my engine games after Castle's knight b4, but Leela actually equalised very easily there. So probably the move that Eagle played, and most of my other engines played, is the best, c3. Stopping knight b4 and defending d4. Now, I mean, this setup with knight f3, bishop d3 and c3 makes a lot of sense if you're thinking, you know, that a6 is going to be followed up with b5, because a6 b5 following up with a4 with a pawn on c3 rather than a knight. I mean, that's a very nice structure indeed. However, you know, black can also interpret the pawn on a6 simply as making a knight on c6 safe. There's no bishop b5, there's no b4 to b5. That's covered by the pawn on a6. And that gives black the opportunity to play e5. And, you know, we're back in a sort of Ruy Lopez structure there. And, you know, just from my point of view, you know, the engines do consider this to be very nicely better for white, and it's probably true as well. But from my point of view, when black's played a move like 2a6, seeing this position at move 5, where black sort of has parity in the centre, yeah, I feel like I've missed a trick somehow. You know, it might not be true, but that's just the feeling that I have. So white castles, bishop e7. And now a very interesting moment. I mean, white's really got to decide, you know, what sort of plan are you going to choose? I mean, and basically you've got two choices. Are you going to keep the tension in the center and develop your pieces around that? You could think of some, you know, some standard Lopez development in some way. Or are you going to block up the center, play d5, and then expand on the queen side? I suppose, you know, the one downside to playing d4 to d5 is that you'll follow up with c3 to c4, and then c2 to c3 feels like a wasted tempo. You know, it's on the other hand, black will play knight c6 and back to b8, so, you know, it's not all bad. Probably it sort of cancels each other out there, really. Yeah, I mean, in this position, well, both Leela and Stockfish were actually being slightly careful about this position. Stockfish, for example, was playing knight bd2, and after castles, then it was playing h3. So Stockfish was waiting for black to castle kingside, then playing h3, keeping the central tension. And, after a few preparatory moves there, you see that Lila wasn't shy about having played a6 to play a5 to a4, so wasting a tempo there. Then at some stage, Stockfish was playing d5 and c4. And, this was just a pleasant position for White. I think Lila managed to draw this game, but, very nice, sensible play from White. Another idea that Stockfish played, I forced it to play rook e1, and then Lila played bishop g4, d5, knight b8, h3, bishop h5. But it's much more natural to play h3 when Black's played the bishop to g4 already. And Stockfish just ends up expanding on the queen side again. And very, very long game this one, but again, Stockfish managed to break through Lila's resistance. What Eagle does h3 is pretty sensible. The idea is to stop the bishop coming to g4. So Eagle's clearly looking not to play d4 to d5, but stop the bishop coming to g4, remove any of this pressure, and then we're going to play, the standard Lopez moves and just try and keep the tension as long as possible. However, this move h3 is somewhat incautious, and it's amazing how all of the engines, also Revenge in this game, but certainly Stockfish and Lila, they jump all over this move, and they see in this move h3 a huge opportunity to really develop some active play, and they go for it completely. And I think if there's one thing that's typical of the play of modern engines, it's this real urge to find active play wherever it is, and a real drive to make the most of any opportunity that presents itself. What does this move h3 do? Well, it stops bishop g4, but it also provides a little hook for Black. If Black were to play the move g5 to g4, then that would actually open up the g-file and give Black counterplay, unexpected counterplay in that area. So, that's what the engines go for. They go for this move h6, and the idea is simply to play g5 and g4. Now, the interesting thing is that the move rook g8 also popped up on Lila's radar, and this move turned out to be also very, very dangerous. Had some games with that, and g5 to g4 was coming in very, very quickly. It's got shades, I have to say, of the amazing game Aronian Kramnik from the candidates in Berlin in 2018. I don't know whether you remember this game. This was from an anti-Berlin, and Aronian played the incautious move h3, and then Kramnik just went rook g8, king h1, knight h5, c3, g5, and in we go. Just a huge attack, and he won as Black in 27 moves against Aronian, basically scuppered Aronian's chances in the candidates for that year. So makes you, reminds you of that an awful lot. Also this idea of playing for g5, it's really very, very reminiscent of Mamedyarov, of the elite players. Amazing how often Mamedyarov plays g5, especially in these Lopez positions. This is an example from again another anti-Berlin. Caruana against Mamedyarov, Bucharest 2021, and after h3 was played, whack, g5 came in as well, opening up the g file, going for g4, and really, it was a very exciting game, and even once the queens got exchanged, then g4 was coming in, and g3, very, very powerful indeed. So this idea of g5 is known, and elite players are extremely well acquainted with it. But still, very, very impressive to see how quickly, basically it's the only move that the engines consider. And actually both Lila and Stockfish, really start taking evasive maneuvers very, very quickly here. So, for example, Stockfish played bishop e3, g5, d5, knight b8, knight h2 already getting the knight out of the way of g4. Lila also did the same thing, bishop c2. Lila was even more extreme, actually. Played knight h2, f3, and then even g4 just to block this play. White was slightly better, but it wasn't anything amazing really. So that's very, very important. But the interesting thing as well is that h6 is kind of a half move as well, right? I mean, it's not yet committing black to g5. From that point of view, it's different to the move rook g8. So, for example, I suggested the move knight a3 in games between Stoflace and Stockfish. And here, Stoflace was taking and playing d5, just switching back to a central plan, which again is very, very sensible. I mean, these half moves a6 and h6, beginners are often warned, not to play them. Don't just make them just like that. But sometimes they can, sort of hint at possible plans, but not ruin other plans either. And here, h6 threatens g5, but after knight a3, which, moves the knight away from the center, well, you can also switch to a central plan with here and d5, which turned out quite well for Stoflace until it started sacking pieces in total bananas fashion. So, Eagle played d5, knight b8 and c4, very, very sensible. Knight bd7, knight c3, and it just looks like a normal position. But here, Revenge really started to get motoring and played the move g5. So g4 is one idea, and the other idea that black's going to have is to go knight f8 to g6. It's a little bit like Simon Williams' Black Lion system in the Philidor. Pretty much the same thing. Really very impressive. So knight h2 was played, knight f8 and b4. And for the moment, it looks like white's kind of contained the initial attack. We're going to have get in c5 quite quickly. g4 is prevented, and black's going to have to spend a few moves getting into stuff. h5, would leave the pawn on g5 hanging, for example. But Revenge really starts doing some good stuff here. g4 straight away, just as a pawn sacrifice. So what does white do? Well, h takes g4 was what Eagle played, and that's very sensible. I asked the engines, what about h4, for example? Could you try and keep the king side closed that way? But, Leela against Stockfish. Stockfish was just going in for the old attack with knight takes h4. And, it's so primal and basic, but it's incredibly strong. Takes, bishop takes h4, queen f6, king h1, g3. And, this was really, really dangerous, I think, you just have to be an engine to be able to defend this properly. Leela managed, but, it was very, very uncomfortable. So, it's already too late. You can't keep the king side closed there. So Eagle played hg and now h5. And this is a very nice technique, well worth remembering. It's all about creating hooks. h3 has given black a hook on the king side, something to attack, and then you sacrifice a pawn. You sort of draw that hook, that bit on the king side that you can latch onto. You draw it forward with a pawn sacrifice so that you can attack again. And of course, you're losing a pawn, but you're opening up, two files against the opponent's king. It's a lovely technique there. And now it just starts getting completely crazy. Now Stockfish was defending with g5, knight g4 and f4, really sort of fleeing forwards, you can say, as a defense. And this was completely crazy. Actually, it won quite a few games against Leela in some absolutely amazing games. I'll just show you a couple of them just to give you a taster. So a5 played, just trying to break this this white queenside front and get access to the a7 g1 diagonal. c5, a takes b4, knight b5. Lovely play from Stockfish, just somehow managing to generate some queenside play there. E takes f4. You can see all of white's dark squares are collapsing here. Takes and bishop b2. This looks so dangerous for white, but simply Stockfish is finding some way to break through on the king side. So they're just some incredible ideas here. Knight d7 was one idea of Leela's, and then this move g6. I think the idea was to take then e5, and this gets open. Knight e5, g7, rook g5, g3, f3, queen h2, king d7 takes. You know, just completely bananas. J8 queen, no idea why he did that. Knight takes c7. We've got bishop b5 checks coming in. You know, it's obviously, you know, unbelievably dangerous for black, and you know, white won quite nicely that game. Another great game, just an amazing tactic that I wanted to show you. Just Leela sacrificed the rook basically, and now starts to come with the pieces. I mean, this is pretty dangerous. You know, we've got all sorts of stuff coming in. Rook c1, bishop d7, knight f4, and here Stockfish came up with an amazing way of swapping off the queens. I mean, queen d8, bishop d8. You know, white's a rook up, but black's got plenty of counterplay, and there's loose pieces everywhere. But Stockfish came up with this amazing idea. Pardon me. A way of exchanging off the queens, and also swapping off some extra pieces like the dark squared bishop, which would be a very dangerous black attacking piece. What's the idea? Well, queen e7, bishop f6, and amazingly the black queen is trapped. So yeah, I mean, black picks up the bishop on d3, but we take check, go rook c7, rook c8, rook b7, and well, I mean, black's attack is nearly finished, and white is simply winning. So yeah, amazing stuff there, and but that was how Stockfish defended, just actually just incredibly aggressively, sacrificing lots of pawns, and yeah, I mean, you're opening up the white king side, but somehow, yeah, the black king side is getting open too. But I mean, I couldn't, yeah, I mean, I just couldn't tell you that this is going to be any good for white at all. I mean, it's amazing defense, really. Eagle played the move f3, which is yeah, I mean, you're trying to keep this pawn as some sort of albeit flimsy barrier, you know, and trying to keep the black pieces at bay, really. But it's not bad. I mean, black's going to start crawling in on the dark squares, which are quite weak. And yeah, you know, if you're looking at what is white actually doing here, not 100% easy to say. Rook b1 feels a little bit slow from white, really, but you can actually bring the rook round to b2 and you know, have some sort of protection there. So I think that's the idea. But it already shows that you know, it doesn't mean that black's better, but it does mean that black's the one doing the pushing, really. So knight f4, bishop c2 from Eagle. Yeah, again, somehow I thought that Stockfish with knight e2 was taking just a little bit more action there. This was quite a nice tactic, though. Gf, knight f4, g3, hitting the knight on h2. Then knight e2, and actually Stockfish just allowing the pawn on h2 to cover the white king. And now afterwards, next, you're going to try and play c5 and play for some queenside play. Worked out quite well for Stockfish, though, you know, looks completely murky to me at the moment. After knight f4, Eagle played bishop c2, which, yeah, to me feels very, very calm. And this was a signal for Revenge to start sacking. So hg, fg, rook takes h2, king takes h2. And now there's a couple of possible moves. Revenge played bishop takes g4, which is pretty nice, really. I do like the move. You know, bishop getting developed. We're freeing this rook to possibly come over to the h-file, and we're doing it with tempo, attacking the queen on d1. But even knight g4, bishop g5 is possible. And after g3, we've got well, actually a couple of nice ideas here. One idea was I think this was the line that Stockfish played, and that's just to play king e7, g takes f4, queen h8. Queen e2, bishop h4, and we're going to see this this theme a lot during this game. You know, black is a lot of material down, a rook regularly in actual fact, but the problem is for white is that, you know, white's even got quite a few moves. I mean, it's going to be 2 whole moves before black gets the rook to g8, but black doesn't have any time to get the king away from there. You know, if white could run over to here, get the king to d3, then the king would soon be enjoying its ill-gotten material. But as it is, you can't do that. And well, I mean, the only way that Leela found to defend was to play like this and somehow try and get some sort of block on the G file. But I mean, again, you know, I would. I'd be very proud of myself if I managed to find the defences that Leela found to draw this game. So this is really quite very, very difficult for white. The other thing, you know, the amazing thing is how many lines there are actually that are you know, quite decent for black here. You know, I'd have thought you'd be, you know, really treading a very narrow path, but in actual fact, black's got another way of reaching equality, and this was the one that Leela chose, which is to play knight h3 check and bishop e3. So this is pretty dangerous. I mean, we're just looking for queen g5, castles, and, you know, just complete carnage. You can't take on e3 because I've got knight takes e3 check, of course, and king h3 allows knight f2 check. But I have to say, this is one of those lines where I couldn't really understand what the basis of the attack was, and made it even more confusing that, you know, Stockfish played rook h1, knight f2, gave back the queen for rook and piece, and yeah, you know, I can imagine that this is fine for black. That looks quite, you know, reasonably normal somehow. But what on earth was wrong with queen f3, threatening queen takes f7 and also bishop e3? And, you know, I was looking at the only thing I could really think about was, you know, knight g5, attacking the queen, defending the pawn on f7. But then after queen e2, I'm still threatening bishop takes e3, and after bishop d4, rook h1, well, I'm the one attacking now. I'm threatening rook h8 check, also simply rook h5 to attack knight on g5. So yeah, the only other move I could think of was to play knight f4 check after queen f3. But g takes f4, queen h4, queen g3 covers everything, no problems. The amazing thing is that e takes f4, this was Stockfish's line, with equality. And again, I was just, are you serious? I mean, you know, white's just a rook up here. You know, black's, you know, probably 3 tempi away from you know, creating you know, enormous threats. I've got the h file for my rook, and I can just run with my king. You know, what could be wrong with that? But actually, it's, you know, it's way more tricky than that. So the first thing, I just can't run with the king. So if takes check, king f2, I just get hit with queen h4 check, and if king e2, then bishop g4. It's that easy. You know, the white king isn't running. Again, if I try and play rook h1, we play queen g5, threatening knight e5 check, and well, I can throw in rook h8 check. It doesn't really matter. King e7, king f1. There's this great move knight h2 check. And after rook h2, I've got queen g1, king e2, bishop g4. With the additional nice point that takes queen e3 check is possible. Well, there's other stuff, but this is the one that made me smile, followed by bishop takes f3 check. So this is really, really dangerous. So actually, I kind of, yeah, I kind of needed Stockfish to find a defense, which is, you know, knight e2. That's probably the best move. But then again, we follow up with, you know, with queen g5, and it's simply, you know, simply incredible. And after bishop e3, there's just one trap you have to avoid. Knight e5 check looks strong, but that would give queen g3 with a pin on the queen. But simply knight takes e3, double check. And we're going to end up picking up material at the very least. Maybe this is already winning for black. So I mean, amazing, you know, really amazing counterplay there. So so many ideas for black. But Revenge played bishop takes g4, which is you know, also the main move of all my engines, and it's a very natural one. Queen e1, and now knight h5. So what are we aiming for? We're aiming for bishop h4 to g3. That's what we're aiming for. And also supporting the knight on f4. g3 played, and now black just completely coolly king d7. A great idea. So basically we're aiming to get the queen on h8 and the rook on g8, and then this king is going to be completely lonely. I mean, it's one of those things that you sort of blink, and then you suddenly look at the white king and say, hey, wait a minute, where did all the defensive pieces go? You know, somehow the light square bishop went to c2. The knight on the king's knight got well, it was destroyed by an exchange sack on h2, And, well, you know, the pawn cover's going as well. Yeah, I mean, you don't quite realise it just, you know, playing through the moves normally, but you suddenly realise all of a sudden, my goodness, white really doesn't have many pieces defending there. Now, I mean, a move like g takes f4, queen h8, it's curtains, basically. You know, we've just got threats of discovered attacks. Something like rook f3, I go bishop f3 with another discovered attack coming, rook g8 as well. So yeah, you know, I mean, if I had this as white, I'd be, you know, very, very pessimistic indeed. But well, there is counterplay. Bishop a4 check. What's the idea of this move? The idea is, well, to either create counterplay against the black king, or to force the black king back to the back rank, which blocks in the rook on a8. You know, if the rook on a8 can't get into the attack, that's obviously going to be a less dangerous attack. However, I don't know whether you remember, black's early opening move, 2a6. There we are. Well, after bishop a4 check, it comes into its own, because we're allowed to play b5. If Alekin was playing the black side, he would probably be claiming right now that he'd seen all this when playing 2a6. I don't think even Revenge had seen this, but it comes in useful. We can play b5. C takes b5. What's it do? It gains as a tempo, you know. So there's no longer a check, so we can work out what we want to do. Queen h8 is possible, but after b6, king d8, I like it a little bit less because, yeah, as I said, we're not going to get the rook on a8 into play. King g1, c takes b6. My engine thought that this was still going to be fine for black, but yeah, a little bit nervous about it, to be honest. I much prefer the move that Revenge played, which was bishop f6. And after b6 check, king e7. So spending a tempo, it's true, but you know, this bishop is actually quite useful on f6. After gf, ef, now this bishop is going to have access to d4, also attack the loose knight on c3. And the way that we're playing, of course, you know, we're keeping the rook on a8 free, so now queen h8 and rook g8 is the huge threat again. So white's, you know, white's made the first step of defending, but yeah, now got to find a second. Yeah, I mean, the bishop on a4, well, it's sort of moved away from the, even further away from the white king, so that's a little bit worrying. On the other hand, the bishop a4 does cut across the black king, so there might be some chance for counterplay, and we'll see how that works out too. So b7 was white's idea. Now rook b8 is possible, but it's a little bit slower. What Revenge did was astonishing, though. It just poured oil onto the fire with a great move, knight takes g3, crashing open the white king side. Now there's lots of lines that white can play. I mean, first of all, just don't think of king g3, because bishop h4 check is the key idea there. If you take on h4, for example, I go queen check, rook g8 check, queen h3, king f2, and rook g2 mate. All that material, and the pawn on the 7th about to queen as well. Doesn't help. B takes a8 queen is completely possible. We go knight takes f1, and then yeah, white's best is to go king g1. If you go queen f1, queen a8, it's very dangerous, this idea of the queen coming into to h8. I actually thought maybe we could go king g3 and start running, but queen h8 is unbelievably dangerous again, you know. And if you go king f2, again, I do my queen check. King e3 is the only move. King e1, bishop h4, and again, you know, the king cannot run. And after king e3, there's bishop g5, and again, yeah, the king just can't run. Pardon me. You know, we've just got yeah, somehow just how the pieces are, and the pawns, and also this incredible bishop on g4. You know, it's the black king is always caught in the middle. So king g1 was the best. There was one fun line here. It just shows you engine defense, really. You know, just working out the right pieces to try and destroy. And now the key thing is that e takes f4 allows this great move e5. If you go bishop e5, I go queen h4 check, and then I can play rook takes f1, get some defensive pieces towards there, and white's better. And the move d takes e5 allows queen e4. Again, now we're allowing the king to escape by threatening the knight, and if the knight tries to move away, we've got this discovered attack, d6 check and queen a8. It's yeah, always amazing. Simply, you know, the defensive ideas that engines come up with here. So after bishop takes f4, we go queen h8, yeah, I mean we're threatening to go e takes f4 now. Otherwise, we're coming in with queen h3. A lot of counterplay, but yeah, you know, the engines were ending up drawing all of these. Eagle played queen takes g3. A knight's been sacrificed, we take it, why not? And now queen h8 check, king g1, rook g8. That looks scary. We've got all sorts of discovered attacks, you know, coming in here. Well, our pawn on b7 comes to the rescue. White plays b8 queen, just to distract this rook away from g8. And you do notice as well, you know, the value now of this bishop on a4, that, you know, if the pawn had queen on a8, we might even be able to ignore it. But with the queen on b8, we're threatening queen takes c7 check, and the black king's going to be in all sorts of trouble. Quite apart from the idea that we might also have a queen e8 check at some stage if the black queen and rook leave the back rank. So b8 queen, rook takes b8 played, and now white's got to decide, how do I destroy some of these attacking black pieces? Again, you can't escape, remember, with the king, bishop h4. So queen g4 just gets hit with rook g8, which is basically very, very bad. Bishop d7. Well, white's got rook and 2 pieces for the queen, but rather 2 rooks and a piece for the queen. But queen g7 picks up another one, so not good. So bishop takes f4 was played, and now yeah, quite interesting. A few moves for black again. This is the amazing thing always. Even e takes f4 is not bad here. We play rook takes f4, just you know, trying to get a path for the white king away to the queen side. And now bishop e5. And there was one lovely idea. I was analysing this by myself without an engine, and I came up with this lovely idea. So rook f1, and now what I wanted to play with black was f5. Rook g8 looked like this was going to be some sort of draw, really, with bishop d4 check and perpetual, and apparently it is. You know, I mean, was it, I think, king g2 here, there, and then queen f1 check. And well, if ever you exchange off queens, then black takes the knight on c3, and it's just a drawn opposite coloured bishop ending. But what I thought was that maybe black could play for, or that was what I was hoping for a win with f5. So just stop the white rook getting to f7, and after ef we go rook g8, and after f6 we go king f8. The idea is we just block the f-pawn, and then we're going to have some sort of discovered attack. Actually, it's quite interesting. I mean, king f2 was my follow-up, and it had a fantastic tactical idea. Because after bishop h3, then just have a little look at it. I can actually play the move queen g7 check. Ah, there we are. Takes, king g7, rook g1 check, and rook h4 is checkmate. Lovely. Ah, queen g7. I love that move. But actually, after king f2, apparently black can play queen h6, king e3, and bishop takes c3, and this is actually quite decent for black. Total mess, of course, and yeah, you know, possible. But it just goes to show again, you know, in these super sharp positions, you know, just as a human player, you tend to assume there's one way and that's all. But the engines find multiple ways, always quite amazing. But rook g8 was played, and black, you know, rook and piece down, but obviously a huge threat there. So white played the move queen h2 here. E takes f4, takes and takes. And, well, you know, you sort of assume, really, hasn't white done really, really well here? You know, you managed to exchange off the rooks and your rook for a pawn up. The one problem is, however, is that actually looking at the position, you don't have that feel of, ooh, white is up loads of material. And I think that's, you know, partly due to the difference in king safety. The black king is completely safe. The white king is actually being attacked by 4 black pieces, and that's a rook and 2 bishops, and also a very dangerous pawn. And there are some immediate tactical threats in the position. I mean, first of all, there's bishop takes c3. There's a loose knight there. Bishop d4 check is also a very unpleasant idea. And for example, if the knight on c3 moves, well, we've got all sorts of discovered attacks with this bishop. But a move bishop d1, if the knight moves away from c3, could pick up the loose white bishop on a4. And remember, if you get a minor piece, then you've got the two bishops, a pawn for the rook. Material's not that bad at all. So this is actually very, very dangerous. And the nice thing as well is that if white plays a move like king f2, tries to escape, then we just play a move bishop d4, king e1, bishop c3. And again, this white king on e1 just cannot get out of the box, and has to remain in the attack zone there. So really a recurring motif. But the engines wouldn't be engines if they didn't have super clever defenses. Rook f4 actually is just met by bishop e5, which is kind of awkward. Again, you've still got your discovered attacks. Rook f2, we go bishop c3, and then we're just threatening bishop d4 afterwards. I mean, it's going to end up a draw. I mean, white might play rook c1, we go bishop d4, check. I think we're going king d8 in this position, and then we've also got some discovered attacks coming in here. So I mean, it's all pretty decent for black. So Igel found the move e5, which is very clever. Bishop e5 and rook e1, and by bringing the bishop in front of the black king, you're able to stop the threat of bishop c3, stop the threat of bishop d4, get out of an attack that would win back the exchange, and also give the king the white king a little bit of extra freedom. However, black's actually in no rush, and that's really due to the fact that the black king is so safe. So black actually brings in another attacking unit. I mean, this is an attacking unit. I mean, it's going to back up this f4 pawn, and it's also taking control of e4. Bishop b3. And I mean, there's again all sorts of ways for black to play, but bishop h3 check was what Revenge did. King h2, rook h8, and we've basically pushed the white king. We still got a light square discovered attack somewhere, which could be very, very dangerous. And of course, we've got f3 check as well. So knight d1, king f6, knight f2, f3 check. And this is getting really serious, right? I mean, king g1, we go bishop g2, and then we're threatening bishop h2 mate. So white has to give this back. Bishop g2 check, king g1, d takes c5. And we get another crazy position. Crazy, of course, for humans. The engines are just at 0, 0, 0, equal, boring. But, but yeah, this is really... this is a completely crazy position. Of course, these three connected pass pawns are just massive, simply, and very, very scary. Again, I'd much rather be black in this position than white, but it is actually all right for white. The funny thing is that in this position, Igel and Revenge agreed a draw. The TCC draw rule kicked in. Which, to be honest, is just incredibly confusing. But that's a nice thing about playing engine games at home. You can just, let them play out this position and see what happens. And actually, white has a pretty decent way of dealing with the threats. Just actually, we're going to give a piece back for this pawn on e4. e3, I've got knight d3 check, and I'll just be able to chase away the black king. I think here I go rook g6 check, force it onto the h file. So rook g7 was this was Stockfish against Leela, I think. Leela against Stockfish, rather. So bishop e4 takes, king f5. I mean, white's only got an extra pawn now. It's been a whole rook up for so much time. Was a piece up just now, and now just a pawn up. And here Stockfish decided to liquidate into a drawn rook ending. King f3, rook b2, and rook e7, rook b4, rook c7, king e5, and the game was drawn quite soon after. So there we are, a really quite amazing game, I think. I thought the opening phase was very, very interesting. This move a6, very offbeat, very unusual, but a lot of food for thought in terms of transposition ideas. I saw that Simon Williams has played this in Blitz as well, so even some strong players have played it. And you know, moving from this position and seeing how amazingly actively the Engines played it, you know, moving to here with g4, just opening up the king side, using that pawn on h3 as a hook, you know, shades of Mamedyarov and Kramnik, you know, really very, very impressive. And the whole, you know, the whole attack was incredible. And also, you know, the amazing thing, of course, being that black had multiple ways to prosecute the attack, knight g4 or bishop g4. But so many of these positions where, you know, black's just a rook down, and still has to spend a couple of tempi getting the queen and rook into play, you know, that's but still white's in big trouble. But I think the key thing is there, and probably that's, you know, if you're looking for a, you know, an extra little quick rule of thumb during your attacks, then have a little look to see how easy it is for the opponent's king to run to the other side, to escape the attack that you're launching. If it's not easy at all, you know, you don't have to make much effort to prevent that, then you've probably got a, you know, chances for a long-term attack there. Yeah, and well, you know, the tactics simply absolutely gorgeous. I mean, this is a pretty spectacular position, right? And come to think of it, so is this as well. You know, just amazing, really amazing tactics. And yeah, I mean, this position as well, with black being just a rook for a pawn down, but still having plenty enough play due to the, you know, disparity in the safety of the kings, and also loose white pieces, minor pieces, bishop on a4, knight on c3. You know, just yeah, I mean, a lot of I mean, it's all based on amazing calculation, of course, but there are enough positional factors there, you know, to yeah, that, you know, if you're ever, you know, thinking about playing an attack, you could sort of think, well, you know, I've seen an attack like this, Igel-Revenge, where you know, because of these factors, loose pieces, king safety, you know, I had compensation even when the queens were taken off. You know, you can think like that and apply that in your own game. So there we are. That was a long video, but I hope it was enjoyable. It was. I thought it was a really amazing game. I thought it was the best game of the cup. You know, if you enjoyed the video, why not give a like or subscribe to the channel? Take a look at my new book, The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, packed full of analysis of engine games and lots of ideas about how to work with engines and well, all the stuff that I've done as well. And otherwise, you know, thanks very much for watching this video, and hope to see you at the next one. Thanks for watching.